Are you looking for the best 2024 NFL weekly best ball rankings and advice around? Then get ready for the Week 5 IDP Plus Best Ball Podcast. Welcome in to the Draft Lab. I'm Joel Worth, and this is the IDP Plus Best Ball Podcast. It is Week 5. We are coming off an awesome Week 4. We put 2 teams into the top 16 of the Wildcat on Underdog. So always nice to give the bankroll a little bit of extra padding there. So ready to get back into those streets. We're looking forward to Week 5. It's going to be, it's getting wacky, folks. 4 teams on bye this week. We've got a London game, so only 10 games on the slate. So a little bit of a different atmosphere in best ball this week. So let's talk about who's not going to be there. The teams on the bye: Los Angeles Chargers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Tennessee Titans, and the Detroit Lions. Look at those teams. And the thing that sticks out is you're losing some running backs, right? You're losing Saquon Barkley, you're losing Tony Pollard, you're losing Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, you're losing J.K. Dobbins, what he's been doing. So the running backs are, they're going to be kind of thin this week. Then to the games that are off the slate, Thursday is Tampa Bay and Atlanta. You've got the London game, the Jets and Minnesota. Dallas and Pittsburgh is Sunday night, and New Orleans and Kansas City is the Sunday night game. Lose the Chiefs, you lose Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, you lose Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara, another running back from the Saints, Breece Hall, even though he's been struggling, from the Jets, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson. A lot of big names that aren't on the slate this week. So it's going to be interesting. Definitely, you're going to see some variety in your drafts this week. I can tell you that from drafting early in the best ball streets. It's been a little bit different. There's a lot of variation. Once you get past that, we'll talk about our rankings here in a little bit. Once you get past that kind of first round, the first 6 or 7 picks, things really start to differentiate themselves. So it's going to be interesting this week, definitely. Let's talk about the big picture. We finally started to get some scoring last week. There were more overs than unders in Week 4. Obviously, those things are a little bit relative, right? The environment adjusts for the low scoring. But we had 10 games go over the total this week. The last 2 weeks, it had been 10 games under the total and 6 games over the total. So that switched a little bit. So we're finally starting to pick up some scoring. Hopefully offenses are catching up to defenses. The whole complaint about, not having preseason is getting washed out. So hopefully the offenses are going to start to get going here. We can adjust to the too high safety and all the other stuff that's going on. And we can start getting some points put up on the board. Speaking of which, there is one game total over 50. Seems to be the case for the last, I think, 3 weeks. There's been one game total over 50. That game is Baltimore and Cincinnati. Division game there. There are 6 teams with implied team totals under 20 this week. The Carolina Panthers playing the Bears. Both teams in the Miami-New England game. Obviously, Miami really struggling. If you saw them on Monday night, things do not look good with Tyler Huntley under center. Hopefully, we'll talk about them when we get to the rankings. Hopefully, he can, an extra week of practice gets things going. But, yeah, man, really, really struggling for the Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill bags. Again, both teams in the Las Vegas and Denver game. What's going on with Devontae Adams? Sounds like he wants a trade. Very questionable if he'll ever play for the Raiders again. Missed last week with a hamstring injury. So I don't think he's going to play for them anymore. So you have to change your outlook on the Raiders entirely if he's not part of their offense. Does that affect Brock Bowers? Does it affect Jacoby Myers? Denver's defense has been playing pretty well of late. So that's definitely something we need to take into account. And the New York Giants, also team total under 20, going to play Seattle, long road trip out there. They do have coming off the Thursday night game, so they got the mini bye, but long trip out to Seattle. So 6 teams with implied team totals under 20, 6 teams with implied team totals over 24. Both teams in the Baltimore-Cincinnati game, as we talked about. Baltimore has the highest team total of the week. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars playing Indianapolis, Green Bay traveling to Los Angeles to play the Rams, and San Francisco hosting the Arizona Cardinals. So let's get to our week 4 rankings. So we talked about round 1 is pretty much consensus. I'm starting, I think in most drafts, the 1-2 is going to be Jordan Mason and Derrick Henry. In most drafts I've seen so far, it's been Jordan Mason. You can get Derrick Henry at the 3. Sometimes he slips to the 4. Sometimes, occasionally, he slips to the 5. Not very often. But Jordan Mason almost never goes past 2. So he's the kind of consensus number 1. Makes sense. San Francisco playing a home game against Arizona. They're heavy favorites. Arizona's run defense has been absolutely terrible, getting run over by Detroit 2 weeks ago. And I think the Commanders just scored another touchdown on them. Yeah, just bad environment for the Arizona Cardinals going out to San Francisco. I think Jordan Mason's pretty easily the number 1 pick this week. Hopefully he does better than Saquon Barkley and Breece Hall did as consensus number 1s, or number 1 and number 2 last week. Did not work out for either of them. And then you get the elite receivers, Nico Collins, Jamar Chase. Kyren Williams has to be, he's almost always a top 5 pick. Again, playing Green Bay's run defense just hasn't been very good, just consistently meh at best, just not great. So, and he's the entire Rams offense. No Puka, no Cooper Kupp. Passing game just hasn't been there with the Tyler Johnsons and Jordan Whittingtons and Demarcus Robinsons of the world. Just hasn't been very good. So Kyren Williams is the Rams offense. So he's a consensus top 5. Now you start to separate a little bit. Jaden Reed is very frequently the number 7 pick. I've got him at 6 in my rankings. Interchangeable with DK Metcalf. If you like DK Metcalf, I just think there's going to end up being more target competition for him. More touch competition, honestly, because that game could get out of hand, especially if Malik Neighbors doesn't play. Seattle plays the Giants. I could see Seattle getting out to a big lead and then it being, a Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet kind of salt the game away. So I give a slight advantage to Jaden Reed, but DK Metcalf is right there. They're 6-7 for me. That's your pick 6 turn. And that's where things really start to get differentiated, as we said. At this point, I could see taking Josh Allen. I'm not taking him in the first. I think that's way too early. There's other, those top 5 picks I would much rather have over Josh Allen because there's other quarterback options I like, some really nice stacking options. Then you get into the next tier of running backs. Ken Walker, as we just mentioned, has a nice matchup with the Giants coming off the 3-touchdown game on Monday. And I think Josh Jacobs is kind of sneaky this week. You're seeing a lot of, obviously the winning stack last week was kind of Jordan Love, Jaden Reed. So you're seeing a lot of, Jaden Reed's going in the 7, 8, 9 range. Jordan Love is getting drafted. He's usually the 4th quarterback drafted. You're seeing Dontavian Wicks get drafted. You're seeing a lot of Tucker Kraft get drafted. So the Packers passing game is getting a lot of love this week. I don't want to ignore Josh Jacobs. The Rams run defense has been really bad. They made DeAndre Swift, of all people, look good last week. So I'm not going to ignore Josh Jacobs. I think he needs to be in that second tier. We talked about DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Stephon Diggs. Deebo's got Arizona, the probably, opportunity to put up big points for the 49ers. Steph Diggs revenge game. Buffalo's going to Houston. So you got to think he's going to be highly motivated. You got to think the Texans are going to want to let him have an opportunity to get back at his old team. So he's kind of the back end of my tier 2, along with Deebo. If you want to put him in front of Deebo, that's fine. And Jacobs. This tier is really interchangeable. I think after you get past Metcalf and Reed, after you get past the turn, I could see any of these guys going at any pick, 7 through 12. Then we go on to tier 3. I just don't know if I love the quarterbacks here. If you have to take them at the top of if you get them at the back end of tier 3, I'm okay. Round 3, I'm okay with it. I don't like taking them at the top of round 3. Some other options I like, including George Kittle, because he's the only tight end. We need to talk about tight end. I think this week is going to be defined by the tight ends. You're going to need to find you're going to need to find a tight end who produces for you. I mean, there's just so many bad options out there right now. Tight end's just a mess. Like if you took Mark Andrews last week, you thought you were in pretty good shape. He takes a 0. Isaiah Likely had 1 catch. We thought that was going to be an elite tight end room, and they combined for 1 catch. It's just a mess. Thankfully, we've got David Njoku and Evan Ingram come back. We'll talk about them, but tight end, just a wasteland. Dalton Kincaid, we expected him to be Buffalo's top receiver. He's a cog in the machine. So yeah, Trey McBride's coming off of injury. You're going to have to pick the tight end that scores. You're going to have to get one that scores. You can't take a 0. Yeah, it's just too painful. Like Kyle Pitts last week, Mark Andrews last week. Those guys who take 0s just absolutely kill you. They just kneecap your chances of winning a tournament. So I'm taking the shotgun approach this week. I'm just normally when you do the shotgun approach, it's because you want to get exposure to a lot of players. Here it's because I don't want too much exposure to any one player because I'm afraid that any one of them could kill me if they don't do anything. So I want a lot of exposure to a lot of different players just so I'm not overexposed to any one particular player because I don't want them to just kill my chances of winning a tournament. So the running backs in tier 3, I do like James Cook this week. This is the first week you've seen Buffalo on the main slate in 3 weeks now. They've been playing primetime games, so interesting to see how James Cook will be valued. Devon Achane, I don't think you need to take him here. He's in the Monday drafts, he was going, kind of early round 2. Now after Monday night, after the kind of debacle that they had with the Titans, the Tyler Huntley, just the offense non-functional, he's really falling. He goes at the back end of round 3. He goes early round 4. So you don't need to really prioritize him because you're going to be able to get him later. We'll see as more people kind of jump in later in the week where he settles. Hard to say whether the recency bias is going to push him down or if people are going to say, start to realize that this is a really talented offense and they probably are going to figure things out at some point, and it can't be as bad as it was Monday night. So I'm just going to tuck him in here. Again, early in the week, I don't think you're going to need to take him in this area. You can wait for him, but I think he'll probably settle in this area. Malik Neighbors, big question mark with the concussion. He will have 10 days to get cleared, but that's really, concussion is basically a 10-day injury. So it's a week and a half injury. You're not playing that next week usually, but because they have the extra time, maybe he gets cleared. So yeah, he's again, the upside is phenomenal, but really worried that he just doesn't play. Marvin Harrison, he's usually going before this, but if you want to kind of pair him with Deebo Samuel as a bring back, I'm okay with that. Just really, when he's gotten big targets, it's been really inefficient, just not really establishing. I think everybody thought, after he had that big first quarter against the Rams a couple of weeks ago, everything's great. It's all good to go. Just hasn't been a really consistent connection with Kyler Murray. So I think it's going to come, but it hasn't happened yet. So I'm okay with waiting. And then Kittle's my tight end 1 for the week, and it's really not close, but you can see he's all the way down in the round 3 tier. It's not like he's someone I'm super excited about, just because the game script could get, it could be a Deebo touchdown, a Brandon Ayuk touchdown, and then they just sit on the ball if the defense plays well. I think that's going to be a high-scoring game. I think Arizona's going to put up some points, so I do think Kittle's going to be involved. But, there's always that possibility that, he just gets game scripted out and they just use him as a run blocker. So moving on to round 4, no quarterbacks here. If you want to take a stack partner, this is probably where you want to jump on them. If you don't get one of the top 3, I'm okay waiting. But, if you get a Jaden Reed and you want to get a Jordan Love, then you probably want to jump in round 4. If you get a Nico Collins early, you want to get the Stroud pairing, jump in here. If you get Chase and want to get Burrow to go with him, jump in here. That's fine. It's all good. So, yeah, late round 4, early round 5, because even if you don't get your stack partner, there's still plenty of other. There's usually a stack partner for your secondary options. So I'm not going to force quarterback here. I just don't think you need to this week. Running back is just one. It's Brian Robinson Jr. Gets the Browns this week. Browns kind of got run over by the Raiders last week, and Brian Robinson's doing really well. Austin Eckler should be back this week, so I don't think there's going to be much Jeremy McNichol. I don't think he's going to be scoring 2 touchdowns, but Brian Robinson is kind of the lead back there, and I do think he'll get a pretty heavy workload and should probably do pretty well against Cleveland. This is kind of the underrated receiver tier. These are guys I think all have high ceilings but low floors, depending on how the game scripts go. Zay Flowers. So if you get Lamar Jackson, I kind of want to pair him with Zay Flowers. Brandon Ayuk just hasn't gotten going yet, but it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen soon. It's going to happen at some point that he's just going to explode. So I always want to have some exposure to him because I want to be in on that floor when it happens. Deontay Johnson, man, the target share is just massive since Andy Dalton took over. So not fading him anymore. They get the Bears. Tough defense to throw against, but again, with that volume, you just can't pass that up. And then we get into the secondary tight ends, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride. Both, I think, will be in high-scoring game scripts. So assuming McBride gets back, missed last week with a concussion, that's my next grouping of tight ends. Then we get into the 5-6 round tier. These guys could go at any point. So we talked about all the stacking quarterbacks. Kyler, you want to stack with Harrison and or McBride. Burrow with Chase, Stroud with Diggs or Nico, Jordan Love with, whoever you get. If it's Jaden Reed, if you get a late Dontavian Wicks, you can take those guys at the 5-6 turn if you want, if you don't have a quarterback by then. Tucker Kraft is going to be in play at tight end just because he's getting consistent targets. So moving on to the running backs, the guys I'm not super high on, but could have big roles this week. Ramondre Stevenson, worried about the fumbling, worried about him losing work to Antonio Gibson, but a good matchup with Miami. Tony Pollard just had a good game against Miami on Monday night. And again, Miami's got a short weekend going on the road, so good matchup for Ramondre Stevenson if he can hold on to the ball. James Conner, again, the game script, I think that gets a very high scoring game, the Arizona-San Francisco game. So don't love the matchup itself, but I do like the game environment for James Conner. So 10 running backs that I'm okay with. That's why I'm kind of, that I expect to get drafted. So that's why I'm kind of focusing on the running backs early because you can see there's just a lot more receivers that I'm happy with at the back end of the draft than running backs. I think that's going to be kind of the way it goes for the rest of the year, just because of the nature of the running back position. Then the wide receivers here, again, we talked about Dontavian Wicks. Good environment for the Packers going against the Rams. Matt LaFleur just owns Sean McVay. Rams are just decimated. So I expect that to be a pretty easy Packer win, to be honest, coming off the embarrassing loss to Minnesota. This is the way they started. But so I think they're going to want to pour it on early and then get out of there. But I think they will be able to throw on the Rams. Tyreek Hill, again, it's that Miami offense. They're too talented to fail, but they have failed just because the quarterback is just not conducive to running an NFL caliber offense. But if Tyler Huntley with the extra week can kind of figure the offense out and things start to click for him, then hopefully we can get a productive game from Tyreek Hill, which we just haven't gotten yet. Week 1 was okay, but just has not lived up to his preseason billing. Murray Cooper against Washington. Washington's doing great, but they're still not a good defense. They held Arizona down last week. That game came in under the total. No, it didn't come in under the total because Washington put up 42, but they kept Arizona under their team total. But this is still not a good defense. And Murray Cooper is just the entirety of the Cleveland offense. They're not running the ball well with their offensive line issues. I do like Murray Cooper this week. And then Terry McLaurin, I'm only using him as a stack partner with Jaden Daniels. If you don't have Jaden Daniels, I would not take him ahead of like DJ Moore or Brian Thomas Jr. But if you do have him and you want to get a stack partner with Jaden Daniels, I'm good with Terry McLaurin there. I expect he should be drafted more than he isn't. And then the last group of tight ends before we kind of hit the injured guys, and that's Brock Bowers and Tucker Kraft. Like we said, he's just getting a ton of snaps. He's getting more snaps than Musgrave. He's blocking quite a bit, and he's getting pass volume. Don't think he'll get as much as last week. Don't expect the Packers to throw 50 times again. It's crazy. 2 weeks ago, they ran 50 times. Last week, they had to throw 50 times because they got behind 28-0. So it's been a season of extremes early on for the Packers, but scored a touchdown last week, had like 6 targets, I think, 6 catches. So he's been productive, and we have to start, any production from the tight end we got to take. So I'm easily taking him over the Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely's of the world. And then Bowers, again, with Devontae Adams being out, you got to think the offense is going to run through him. He's been productive, but hasn't scored a touchdown. That's going to come. Raiders go to Denver, so tough matchup. That's why I don't have him ranked higher. But I think he needs to be. He's a top 5 tight end. You can see the drop off. It's just stark out there for tight ends. So let's talk about the players who aren't getting drafted, that I think will be drafted in less than half of drafts, but I think we need to consider Brock Purdy and Geno Smith. Stack partners again, if you want to hold out for a Debo stack partner, if you think that the Niners are just going to obliterate the Cardinals and they're going to throw a lot, good with Brock Purdy. Geno Smith, again, same thing. If you think they're going to end up throwing a lot, if you think that game's going to be competitive and they're going to have to throw a ton, then I like Geno as a stack partner with DK Metcalf. The running backs I'm okay with, I think should get some exposure to Travis Etienne, Zach Moss, Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard going against, who's Carolina play? They've got a good matchup. Let me look here real quick. Oh, they play Chicago, and Chicago's run defense has typically been good, but hasn't done as well as we expected them to. And Jonathan Brooks is not coming back anytime soon. They're not going to open his practice window this week, so hard to believe. But Chuba Hubbard is the RB1 in Carolina. Again, I don't love him, but I think he should. I want some exposure. Just because I think he's got some touchdown upside, and that's what this game is all about. Chase Brown, again, DeAndre Swift, he hasn't been good, but again, the matchup is great. They're going against Carolina. Carolina gave up 3 rushing touchdowns to Zach Moss and Chase Brown last week. So I think DeAndre Swift got himself back in the kind of good graces. So he's clearly the RB1 again in Chicago, and it's a very good matchup. So you're going to want to have some exposure, even though I don't like it. Devin Singletary. Seattle gave up a ton on Monday night. They gave up a ton of production to Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. They both had good games. So I expect Devin Singletary to get a lot of opportunity there. The injured guys, I'm not taking Jonathan Taylor. Just staying away. I don't care how mild his high ankle sprain is. Not touching it. And Joe Mixon, still pretty questionable whether he plays, and even if he does, I don't think, how healthy is he? Is he ready for a full workload? And I just don't think that's going to be a game script that's super conducive to running. They may try, but I think Buffalo's going to score enough that they're not going to be able to sit on the ball or anything. So I think that's a bad game script for him. So I want some exposure, but not a whole lot. Receivers. DJ Moore, Romadunze, the Bears receivers. I think that passing game is going to start clicking soon. Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk against the Colts. You got to like that matchup. Again, Michael Pittman in that same game. If you want to play that game as a high scoring game, you want to get some action in, get some exposure to. Okay with any of those guys. Pittman I like more if Flacco plays and Anthony Richardson doesn't. Sound like Richardson is going to be okay, but we'll see. And then T. Higgins, again, high scoring over-under of the week in that Baltimore-Cincinnati game. So want some exposure to him. Jackson Smith and Jigba. Seems like he only gets the big targets every other week. We need to figure out why that is, but we'll see. And then Devontae Adams, staying away. Again, the hamstring injury, we don't know if he's going to play. We don't know if he's going to be traded. So I just don't think it's somewhere I want to be invested in. The tight ends, again, we need to talk about. I know this is 5 tight ends, so somebody's going to have to draft a tight end from this group. I am taking some David Njoku. I'm taking some Evan Ingram. I expect both of them. Hopefully, both of them are back. So if I need to use them as a swap candidate, I will. But I think Njoku's back, and again, good matchup with the Washington defense. I think that's going to be a high-scoring game. At least Washington's going to be high-scoring, so Cleveland's going to have to throw. I don't think they can rely on the run game. So I do like Njoku if he's back. Again, same thing with Ingram. I expect that to be a high-scoring game. Good matchup against the bad Colts defense. So if those guys are back, I think they become priority targets. It's early enough in the week that we're not sure enough. So I'm not drafting them, in other instances where I might have to use a swap, but I do want to get some exposure to them. And I just think they're better than the other options. Cole Kmet, good matchup with Carolina. Carolina hasn't given up a ton of production to tight ends, but they gave a few touchdowns early in season, week 1 against New Orleans. I think they had like 3 touchdowns from their tight ends. The Baltimore tight ends, if you want to gamble, if you think it's coming, if you think the narrative of they want to get Mark Andrews involved, we said the Chiefs wanted to get Travis Kelce involved last week, and they did. Still didn't score a touchdown. So I think you need to be a little bit of a masochist to want to go there, but I can see it. It is a good game environment. So you have to get some exposure, like you said. I want some exposure to all this. And then a sneaky guy, I think, is Luke Musgrave. We talked about Tucker Kraft. Christian Watson's out, presumably out this week, high ankle sprain. I think Musgrave could be the most likely replacement. He gives them, that deep seam stretching ability is kind of the most direct replacement they have for what Watson does, kind of stretching the defense. I think he's a better option than Bo Melton. So he's a guy I want to have some exposure to as well, because I think he's one of those kind of late tight ends that you could see popping off. Good game environment. The Rams, not very good. So I don't want to have a ton of exposure. I don't want to have a ton of exposure to any of these tight ends, but I do want to have some exposure. I do want to have some Luke Musgrave, because I think he could be kind of sneaky. I could see him getting a couple. A couple of touchdowns is in play. Let's say that, because I think he's going to be on the field more than he has been with the Christian Watson injury. So I do want to get some Musgrave exposure. So that's it for week 5. Hopefully everybody gets out there and wins some money in the best ball streets. Just want to let you know that I did drop, if you're into DFS, I did drop my initial DFS article last week for IDP Plus, and we'll be dropping another one. Should be coming out on Thursday. And if you want to check out IDP Plus, check out everything we got. If your season's off to a great start and you want to use our tools and get into that, that's awesome. If your season's off to a rough start, you may need to check out our tools. So you can get 20% off any subscription for a limited time with promo code PROPS. That's PROPS. So go to idpplus.com/membership, put in promo code PROPS, and you can get access to all our tools, data, IDP articles, the subscriber Discord, and my DFS article that I'll be dropping every Thursday. So you can check out myself and Jameson Hutchinson on Sunday morning doing the live DFS preview show here on the IDP Plus channel. Like, subscribe, and we will see you next week. Good luck, everybody, in week number 5.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.